Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we had an opportunity to listen to two unusual and very successful case studies related to the implementation of synergies at the project level. So now I would like to encourage you, if you have any questions to our two distinguished speakers, please use the opportunity. Please.
Thank you. Matthias Wawode, a national contact point for Germany. You both talked, thank you very much for the interesting presentations, first of all. You both talked about the operating costs, which is always difficult to cover, and that a project pipeline is needed. Can you give a figure what share this would be? I don't know where Mr. Vandenberg is, but this would be very interesting to know what share of operating costs to the investment costs there is, and how big the project pipeline needs to be typically, just to give us a rough idea. Second, you talked about the value of death, and that you covered that by grants, basically. Is that what it was? Follow-up question on that would be financial instruments also used in some structural funds programs be also a viable instrument like guarantees or credits, equity funding? Yeah, thank you.
Maybe on the first question, operational costs, pilot activities cost more than research activities. So that's the kind of discussions we have as well on overhead costs, like flat rates in Horizon 2020 of 25%. I think that's perfect for research organizations, but that's not enough if you're in pilot facilities. But okay, it's being addressed, but it's something to be aware of, that running demonstration costs more than running research activities. So you cannot just extrapolate. As a ballpark figure, I would say like 120,000 euros per full-time equivalent on operation cost within Horizon 2020. Of course, if you operate in, but you have to forget this figure because it's confidential, and it's on the film as well. And I think for commercial operation, I would say like ballpark figure 180. 1,000 euros per full-time equivalent for our type of business. So you can imagine if you employ 47 people and the number is growing, we typically grow with 10 people a year. So because we need to reach this critical mass, we're still not in the stage of this critical mass. And then your second question was on grants. Well, basically, we collaborate in bilateral mode with companies, so they just pay the invoice. So we negotiate. First, we determine what they want to do. We make a proposal. It's a negotiation process, and then we execute, and then they pay. So there's no need for grants if they are willing to pay. But typically, what we see is that they have. Small, medium enterprises, they typically tend to cut their project into small pieces. So they want to try something, they find a little bit of money to do it, they come to us, they pay us 20,000 euros, we do the work, they are happy, and then the whole process of finding money restarts for them to go to a next phase. And that's what I mean, that it's a very slow process. Each time they have a step forward, they need to chase new money. We try to address this with this, for instance, Biobase Northwest Europe project. This is Interreg money. It's typically 60% funded, so we can go up to 100,000 euro vouchers, of which they need to finance themselves 40,000 euros. But this is already a big step forward, and the big advantage compared to applying for regional funding or Horizon 2020 is that the procedure is much shorter and much better fit to the timeline of the SME. If an SME has to apply and has to wait for months, sometimes 1.5 years, with this two-stage procedures before they know that that they will be able to go to the next phase. Yeah, the idea and the momentum is gone. That's reality. So I think voucher schemes are a way to help SMEs on the things they need and at the time they need it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but the financial instrument question was something that I would be interested in, because also in the political discussion, you have say that, well, for tier L levels higher up to the market would be more and more financial instruments. And that could even be already TRL 6 or 5 even, so for the lower or the middle end, that financial instruments are the way forward, as opposed to grants, because they have a greater leverage effect and so on. So from your practical experience, would you have been able to use for the investments, maybe the running of the first prototypes, the upscaling, which you said is risky, would credit equity funding be a viable solution?
Yeah, that's to be honest, I see a lot of lousy ideas passing by as well. I would not put in money myself, but okay, that's another question. But also, yeah, for equity funding done by governments.
By public banks, for example, investment banks.
Yeah, but I mentioned we have this kind of discussions quite often, and there's the European Investment Bank who want to support these kind of things. But yeah, as soon as you start talking to them, they are still bankers, so they still want to have, it needs to be bankable. And at that stage, you don't know if it's bankable or not. So that's the value of that. You have to get through this stage to find out if your project is bankable or not. And that's why to me, SMEs are very important, because it's typically the energy of a few people really dragging the project through. These projects typically die in big companies because they don't have the energy to take it through. So SMEs are really very important for innovation. And I think you need to find ways to help them at the moment they need it and on the things they need it. We know it has been discussed as well, the SME instrument. We think it's a fine instrument, but there's a huge competition. And basically, I think it's good intention. Europe wants to help with the pilot phase. The problem is that a pilot typically serves like 6 months, and then it's idle. It has served its purpose. So that's why we say to Europe, maybe look at the shared pilot facilities, and you finance pilot facilities which are used for 100 projects instead of for one project. That's way better value for money than trying to convince SMEs to build their own pilot, which is then idle after a couple of months. So it's good intention, but there still needs to be a lot of communication on this, we think. And that's what we want to address with the consortium of the smart pilots as well.